Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope you're all doing okay. Well, as a nice break from the regularly scheduled videos that I've been producing, I'm delighted to launch this little 4-part mini-series on the installation of a CNW, a Colorado Norton Works electric starter into a Norton Commando. The video was taken completely by my friend Mike, who lives out in North Carolina, and Mike and my friend Dave here in Portland are brothers. And so thank you, Mike, for taking these videos. I really appreciate it. What I did was I just strung them all together, edited those, and put them into this little 4-part mini-series that I hope you'll enjoy. The first 3 episodes talk about the installation of the starter motor, and we want to point out as well, this isn't intended to be an instructional video, just more for information than anything else. And then the 4th episode is actually a Zoom call, or clips from a Zoom call with Mike and Dave talking about the installation and how it went and so forth. So I hope you'll enjoy it, and take care of yourselves, and I'll speak to you again soon.
I'm not sure what's in here yet. That looks like a starter motor. Beautiful. What's in this next box? That is a starter switch. Very nice. I don't plan on using that. A hose. This is the new seal and basically the kit to replace the keyways, and also with spring washers for that instead of lock washers, which I like. So I just figured it was time to replace that stuff. New O-ring. Cover for the end of the starter drive. Relay for that. Interesting. Here is the clutch rod seal. I ordered an extra one for you, Dave. Some more stuff. I'll have to get this out a little bit and figure out what all of that stuff is too. So we have the engine sprocket with the drive for the starter. And this looks to be some kind of a intermediate gear that probably takes the drive directly from the starter and then allows it to mesh with this gear and probably have that belt drive right in between. I'm gonna put it down and get it out of the package. Matt's thought of everything. Starting the install of the Colorado Norton Works electric start, the first thing I need to do is get the old crankshaft seal out. To do that, I'm going to drill a couple of small holes on either side, and then I will put a small screw in each of those holes and use that to pull it out. There's the screw, which I think you can see right there. And a vice grip on it. I tried to do the other one, but I couldn't quite get that started, so I'm just going to try it here and see if I can get it out with one. And that's it. Came out pretty easy, so not as hard of a job as it might seem. Put a little oil on the lip of the seal so it doesn't go on dry, and I'll just fit it in place. I'm gonna have to tap that in. There's the new seal in. I just used this as a drift. It's just a plumber's bell. It fit properly, so I could just use a little mallet and drift it in place. The next thing to do is to replace the gearbox main shaft circlip, which I've already got the old one off here, and you can see the wear on it. This one's been on there for a while, so it was definitely time to replace it. This can be a pain to do, and I found that the easiest thing to use is even just some cheap snap ring pliers. You can get them in there in the groove and force them apart. Here's the new one, and you can see it doesn't have those wear marks at all. The next step in the installation is to remove the stud that passes through the primary and actually secures the outer cover on. I've already done that here. This is the old stud, which you can see, and this is the new CNW stud, which is clever because in the old stud, in order to get the spacing or the alignment of the chain case, the inner chain case, correct, you might have to add some shims to, like here on the old one, so that it didn't rub against the chain. And that's a common thing when you look at inner primary cases on Nortons, is that at some point they almost all have contact with the chain inside there. So what Colorado Norton Works has done is they've made a new one that is actually adjustable, so you can adjust where it is based on where you need that chain case to rest. You don't have a whole lot of room to maneuver that here, or to bring it in and out, because you also want it completely sealed and up against this face. So it's kind of dependent on both of those things, but this is clever. I've put the crankcase gasket on, and I basically just used on the back side of this, you can't see it now, just 3 little dabs of gasket maker, just some black RTV, and that's really just to keep it in place. This gasket really doesn't need to be covered in goo to seal, and frankly, there's nothing to leak as long as you seal these bolts when you get to that point. So the first thing that I knew was going to be an issue, but was kind of waiting until I actually verified that it was an issue, is this homemade ignition key bracket that I've been using for, the last 20 years. I kind of figured that it wouldn't fit here. I hadn't taken it off yet, just, because, and I'm going to have to take it off now because this edge goes right here, so no way around it at this point. Homemade horn and ignition bracket removed, and now the new beautiful chain case fits in perfectly. Now the inner chain case is bolted on. I used some thread sealant on these bolts, put these little lock tab washers in place. I haven't bent them over yet, but I will. I did have to back this off, so you can see that this is loose right now, and in the next step we'll set that adjustment so that it's snug there and it provides support not just here, but provides support against the inner engine cradle. And there are the lock tabs bent over so that those nuts cannot back out. Now I'm tightening the stud here. You can see it's not loose anymore. There are 2 wrenches that I've used to get down from the top. I went ahead and temporarily fit the starter motor in there because I was a little concerned about the spacing of the secondary gearbox adjuster that I have. When I put a belt drive on quite a few years ago, I put another adjuster over here to hold it in place and to make sure that the main shaft was straight. And I was just getting a little concerned that it wouldn't fit, but it fits beautifully, so no worries there. Looking at the Colorado Norton Works clutch basket that is part of the electric starter kit, I ordered it with new pressure plate because I'd been running a 750 style pressure plate in my 850 for years. And I had also never ordered new clutch plates. I've used just a collection of bronze and fiber and whatever I had laying around just because I had a stack of them in the past. So I figured, why not at this point? Comes complete with the center. It's beautiful. Here's the drive sprocket with the starter gear. Also lovely made. It's just gorgeous. A little bit of oil on it from the bag. Here is the transfer gear assembly, and there are two different sizes of shaft here, and right now as they come, they're held on by some zip ties. The next step is going to be to take off the outer gear assembly and then fit the inner gear assembly with the smaller diameter shaft into this bearing that is already assembled inside the inner primary. Now this comes already assembled and there's a piece of tape over it, so I've already removed that, and the tape is just there to keep it from falling out. So right now I'll go ahead and take off the zip ties and put the inner gear and shaft into the inner primary. It's important to note on this that this washer has a stepped lip, and that lip needs to go against the bearing. You can see that right there. So the lip gets turned to fit against the bearing. Here you can see the shaft and the inner gear of the transfer assembly, and I'm making sure that the stepped lip is out facing the bearing. So go ahead and just put that in. Kind of have to mesh it in with that pinion, and there it is installed. The next part of the instructions is to put the washer back on the main shaft, and you notice that there is a groove there, and that is designed to fit around that circlip that we replaced a little while ago. And the circlip fits in that pocket, that grooved pocket, so that it can't come out. So this washer should just fit on right like this, and you need to feel that going over the circlip, and it is definitely home over the circlip there. I've gone ahead and taken the clutch plates and the pressure plate out of the clutch basket for this next step. It just makes it a little bit easier to get the inner part onto the main shaft. Sometimes this can be just fiddly to put in place. So I'll go ahead and put that on. That worked. And the notes say to check and make sure that it spins without hitting basically the basket spins without hitting the inner primary, and that feels good. If it does sound like it's contacting the inner primary, there's some shims that are included that you would put on the inside of that washer. So basically you would put them right here so that it brings this basket out further. But I think I'm good. I've installed the engine sprocket and the clutch basket with the belt. They kind of have to go on at the same time. It's a little bit fiddly, which is why I could not do that with one hand and had to turn the camera off. But I've got it installed, and it's important that you line up the keyway here and that the key stays in place and doesn't ride up the back. That's usually what the issue is when you can't get it to go all the way on. Also, noticing the distance here is about 1/4 of an inch, which is what the instructions call for. It's what you should be expecting. So I think that looks good. The only thing I would say is this belt is way too tight. Now, in the instructions, it did say to go ahead and loosen the transmission to bring it forward, and then in a later step, you would actually tension that. And the tensioning should be from here. You should be able to get the teeth up to the bottom of that. you definitely don't want to run belts too tight. Well, I kind of was trying to skip a step and wait for that. It went on without me changing the adjustment that I had before. So the transmission's where my previous belt drive was, and you know, I was hoping I'd won the lottery, but it didn't work out again. So I'm going to have to adjust that later, but I'm not going to worry about that right now. I had also replaced the chain, so it's got a brand new X-ring chain on there, and that hasn't been adjusted either, because I figured that I would have to move the gearbox forward, so I knew that the chain was going to have to come forward and needed some slack as well. So that's just another piece that I'll do towards the end before I actually complete the job. So the next step is to install the transfer gear, the outer transfer gear, and this is the one that actually drives this. You notice that this is free to spin backwards, but it doesn't spin forward. It's locked in place. So this goes on like that with the holes on the outside. And trying to get it one-handed, and I think I got it. And then again, the washer, which same as the inner one, which the inner one went like this with the lip towards the bearing. The bearing in this case is on the outrigger support, so the lip part, the raised part, needs to go out.